Hi and welcome to Dean Park, and thanks for joining me for the March 2021 layout update. There's been lots going on in and around the layout this month, including the installation of the scratch built OHLE. We've also got the progress on the factory scratch build to cover, as well as some new kits from Westhill Wagon Works and Scale Model Scenery featuring on the layout. I've also made some progress on the factory area of the layout, including the installation of the tarmac. I'll take you through a step-by-step how-to on how I achieved this look, as well as talking through some of the interiors, which you can see on your screen now. If you enjoyed this video, please click on the like icon. If you want more updates and notifications from Dean Park, please click on that subscribe icon, as well as the notification bell. And if you want to look back at previous videos from Dean Park, click on the icon at the bottom right hand side of the screen. In the meantime, hope you enjoy the video. If you have any comments on what you see, please post in the comment section below. What I've got here is I've got the door to fit on the front of the factory, and it's a Scale Model Sceneries kit, and I'll put the code to that in the description below. It was developed for me by Justin, and he very thoughtfully developed it with a small access door for personnel. But once I'd kind of looked at it and fitted it onto the building, I thought it's a bit tight for space with regard to the design of the building. So I took the two doors in the kit, I sliced them in half, I put them on a bit of backing, and you can see there almost a realistic join in between the two doors there. Okay, so the kit is excellent. It allows for a lot of adaptation, and you know, I would recommend it if you're doing a wooden door, and maybe the roller shutter doors are a bit too modern for your particular structure. What I did then was I primed it, and I painted it in Humbrol 149, and that's an old tin, that is. And that's dating back to the 1990s, when I obviously did my modelling as a teenager. It was perfect when I opened it up. It was hardly used actually, and it airbrushed really well. I don't know if that was to do with the chemicals in the paint back in those days, or maybe I just thinned it correctly, but it really did airbrush particularly well. I looked at lots of colours for the doors of the factories, from sky blues to dark greys to greens, even to oxide colours, but I decided on the green door because it really complemented the building a bit better than the rest. now in the process of basically assembling it. It's a massive jigsaw puzzle. As you can see here, I've got the concrete verticals, and what I've done for that is I've used a Humbrol 121 and I've lightened it with white. There's another one there, and then I've obviously weathered it with the powders. Now I'm weathering it all separately and then fitting it together, and then I'll blend in any of the weathering that doesn't quite tie in, you know, with the stainings and stuff. Hopefully from this angle you can see some of the weathering that I've got on the grey horizontals, the concrete floors. The verticals, however, aren't as well weathered as the rest of the building, because I'm looking at photos here of the building. I'll put one on the screen now actually, and it's surprising how clean these are. I don't know what kind of concrete or mixture it is, but it's certainly not weathered. I don't know, maybe they've painted them, I don't know, but they're certainly never discoloured like the horizontal floor sections. After many hours of work, here's the stage I've got to with the factory. It's all assembled with the verticals and the horizontals in place. You'll see here I've obviously got the brick tin windows that I highlighted in a previous update, and it's also got its roof, which I'll show you in a minute. I'm currently waiting on railings to complete the top section along the front and sides of the building, and hopefully that'll come to fruition in the next couple of days and allow me to show you a completed factory in the next update. The view from the top will show you the panel lines in the roof, along with some pre-shading and various tones of grey to try and replicate the building as is in real life. I'm looking at photographs, aerial shots from the mid-1980s into the 1990s to try and get a sense of the different greys used, and I've tried to replicate it as best I can. Obviously the building has not got its edging around the top of the walls onto the roof yet, the same on the tower section. That'll come, and then obviously I've got the railings to fit onto that. I have other details that I want to add to the front and the side of the build. Hopefully I'll be able to share that with you in the next update. I've been doing some shopping at West Hill this month, and I've picked up some of their latest kits, so I'll take you quickly through them. First, we've got a 4-pack here of depot trolleys, and I've got one out of the packet. They're still on the sprues, I've just basically received them, and it really is fine detail. Obviously you'll cut all the sprue off there and you'll be left with this ultra fine handle and this flat trolley. Ideal actually for a DIY store as well, or a cash and carry, so it's not just limited to the depot, so I'm definitely going to be adding some of them to the scene. We've got mile posts here. This is the LNER style, and you get a pack there, and you can have them on the bases, or I suppose you could just chop the bases off as well, and each of them has different signage or numbers printed onto them or etched onto them by the 3D printer. Okay, so you could pick that out by just once you've painted it, rubbing a marker pen or even a dry brush them to pick to highlight the numbers. Obviously they're more of a steam era. I'll be using them in a kind of rusted form. You know, they were painted yellow, have rust underneath, have the flaking paint stuck beside the line side, maybe overgrown with some bushes. So yeah, I'm keen to get some of them on the layout, because they were still around, and they are still around actually to this day, even some just tossed in the bushes at the side of the line. We've got these platforms for the depot taken up to the locomotives, and they're different, as you can see, one for each side of the loco, and there's really ultra fine railings here. They're not going to snap in the sense that they're going to bend more, so you know they are delicate and they're going to be handled with care, but the detail on these is amazing. You can see the actual platform there and the steps. I've got one from 10 Commandments, and it costs £40 to buy assembled. Okay, and it's a brass etched kit, but these obviously are amazing detail. So I'll be making them up, and they'll put them in the depot, or maybe the engine shed in the depot. Next we've got these gradient posts. Alright, I've got a pack here. I think there's 8 in there, and they've even got the information printed on them, so the gradients and whether it's level or whatever. Again, I'll be putting them on my layout in a state of disrepair. They were painted white or yellow, and then they can be rusted up and weathered down, and overgrown bushes, etc. around about it, so you don't actually have to see them for purpose. Like in modern era, they wouldn't be needed as much. Obviously, steam era, more so. What we've got here is we've got a tiny little cat, believe it or not. He's sitting on top of a fence. That's ridiculously small, and the amount of detail I've actually got on the cat, you can pick that up on the camera. So yeah, I'm going to add that. That could be the depot cat. We've got some cast iron radiators, and you get a pack of 10, a different size. You remove them from the sprue, and then you've got yourself these cast iron period radiators. Add them in my my work, and once they were heated, they were hot all day. They're beautiful. He also does modern radiators. I'll be using them in more depot workshops and stuff. And finally, we've got this little generator. Again, bristling with detail, the vents and couplers. I'll paint that up, remove it from the base, and that'll go in my building site. So that's just a flavour of what I've purchased this month at OHLE Wagon Works. You might want to check out what else he's got. The link is in the description below. I say all these kits are available, and they really are adding the next level of detail to a layout. You know, go back 5-10 years ago, this kind of stuff just wasn't there. But now, the sky's the limit with detail. Almost forgot, we've got Trolley Jeffrey here, and he's one from the OHLE Wagon Works range as well. And he's designed to fit in coaching stock. So he'll fit in your Mark 3s, your Mark 2s, etc. And this is for at-table service. So he'll wheel his trolley through coaches and serve you at your table with hot and cold drinks, snacks, light refreshments, and obviously charge you a pretty penny for the privilege. It's amazing the amount of detail that they've got on the trolley there. Picked out all the different types of food and snacks in different colours. He's got his 2 urns there for his hot water and maybe his tea, and he's fully detailed as well. Right, what I'm using for the tarmac is some asphalt from Woodland Scenics, and the code for that is ST1453, and I'll add a little bit of concrete from Woodland Scenics, which is ST1454. And I've used this old Oxford die-cast box container, and I'm just basically going to mix the paint in there. When it comes to mixing paint for an area, you're better mixing a little bit too much if you want it all the same, but in the case of tarmac, if I run out I have to mix some more and it's slightly different, I don't really care, because it will give a more random appearance to the tarmac surface anyway. And this is just the base coat. We're going to add obviously more tones and shades onto the top of it. paint's now dried, and as you can see it's quite a uniform colour. You'd get away with that if you were doing a newly laid piece of tarmac, you know, like I tried to achieve at the station side of the layout. However, I'm not wanting it to be a newly laid piece of tarmac. I'm wanting to distress it and alter the tones and add varying kind of features within that area. Bearing in mind that a lot of it will be covered by the lower leaf factory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bit of 1200 grit wet and dry paper and a cork block, and I'm just going to take the wet and dry over the surface to take the uniformed colour away to a certain degree, okay? Don't want to rub too hard, you'll go through the paint and back to the material underneath. Apply even pressure at this stage. I'm quite happy with that just now. What I'm going to do now is obviously get rid of this dust before I start applying the next paint. The next stage requires you to mix up some of the Woodland Scenics paints. This is just a mix of asphalt and concrete. You will be adding in more tones anyway, so I've just got a dose of the kind of mid-grey here. I've then got myself one of those scouring pads that you have for doing your dishes. I remove that and then put a rubber band to kind of give a little bung. Alright, and I've got another one here which is a smaller one, just to kind of vary the pattern that I get. And it's kind of like dry brushing with a brush. You apply some of the mix to the sponge, like so, and you dab a lot of it off onto another surface. Now you can reuse this paint here as well, so don't think you're just wasting it on paper. Right. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the painted surface and I'm just going to bounce it off. Alright, bounce it off the surface. Now if you think it's too similar to the tone you've already got, you just add some paint in to give it a mix. Now that's a wee bit too similar to what I've got. I think it's maybe a bit dark actually. So I'll just stop what I'm doing, get some more concrete, pour it into the mix to lighten it, and then reload the sponge. As you saw in the previous clips, there was a bit of dabbing of paint going on there. I must have used about 4 or 5 different shades of grey to get that kind of varied effect that I've achieved. The camera might not be picking up too well actually, but I've got areas of light, maybe around about there. You can probably see lighter areas, and then obviously darker spots and patches as well. When the building goes on top, and I'll put the mock-up on top just now to show you, roughly we'll go around about there, you can see how much of the tarmac is actually going to be on show. That's the paint now dried, and you can see the varying tones that I've used for the asphalt. You'll see also 2 bits of masking tape. That is where the building will sit. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it from the layout, and using the Tamiya weathering masters powders, I'm going to weather the tarmac so it blends in with the building, and also add some weathering around the edges of the tarmac as well. After using the powders around the footprint of the building and around the border of the tarmac, I've got this. Now it might look quite drastic and bizarre just now, but when I put the actual scratch build, which isn't quite finished yet, onto the footprint of the weather, you'll see there. Now we've got the grime accumulating around the door area for loading and unloading. I used an image to get that kind of oily, grimy appearance, and I've also just, obviously, as you can see now, blended in the footprint of the building with that weathering, and added some extra weathering along the bottom of the brick walls. However, I've got some more weathering just to tie it all in. I'm really pleased with that. I don't want to go over the score with it, but then again, I feel that because I've added the weathering, the building feels like it belongs to the tarmac as opposed to just sitting on top of clean tarmac. To the right, the second scratch build will go here, and after I've got the footprint for that, I'll do the same with the weathering powders. I'm now going to drill a hole in the tarmac for the wiring from the lights from the building to go through the baseboard, underneath, back to the control panel at the depot side. Now, what I've done is I've kind of marked on where I want the hole to go, making sure it clears any uprights underneath that's holding the raised section in place. And what I'm going to do, a wee pencil mark there, I'm just going to put a bit of masking tape over there. And you might want then to mark on again where you want the hole to go. The reason I'm putting masking tape there is sometimes you drill into material, the drill will chew up the surface. Especially the case with plastics, you really want to make sure that you protect the surfaces of it. So I'm going to now drill a hole in. I'm starting off with a smaller drill bit, and I'm trying to keep it clear of the back seam so don't scuff it. Nice and slowly. I've now drilled it 3 times with 3 different drill bits. I'm hopefully about to prove my theory correct about taping the surface. And there we go. Got a nice clean edge on that drilled hole. Well, hope you found that how-to on doing the tarmac quite useful and quite easy to follow. I've used it several places on the layout, and I find it always effective and achievable to get realistic results. You're using 2 bottles of paint from Woodland Scenics, a scouring sponge, and your imagination. So it's a cheap and effective way of doing things, and certainly a lot cheaper than going out and buying a large tin of paint from, say, B&Q or something, and then obviously ending up with a semi-uniform finish. I feel that using the dabbing of different shades gives it more of a realistic effect. Looking at the interiors for the building, I've got two interior blocks here. I've got this block here, which is for the front of the building. In the design that I've got, that's totally encased, so what will happen is the building will slide over and this will go inside. And obviously if I need to get into the interiors, I just lift the building up and these will remain in place. This section here is for the side of the build, and that will just slide in the back. Obviously, being a low relief build, I've left it open at the back. From this angle, you'll see all the details and images I've applied to the back wall. These are just Google images that I spray mounted into position before I assembled the floors and the walls at the side. It just allowed me to get in there with the glue and press it down properly. You'll notice that the images on the top two floors are the same, however you won't see the same image looking through the windows, because one window on the top floor is, say for example, this side, and the floor below is that side, so you're going to see different parts of the machinery. This is an empty floor here, maybe an empty warehouse, and this is an area with all the goods, rolls of linoleum, ready to go down the lift to the distribution floor where there's a main door. I've not put any detail on the bottom floors because there is no window access, so you don't see in. I've used this area here as a connection area for the wires coming down from the LEDs to the main sets of wires that will go down through the baseboard and connect up to the main switchboard, but I'll go into that shortly. On this section I've only got one side wall. That's because when it goes into the back of the build, there's a wall, internal wall there already with the build, so it'll fit up there, so I don't need a double wall, if you like. I've not even detailed that floor because there's not a window, so I don't need to obviously put any image against the wall. I've lit one room on this level and two rooms on the front section, and the equipment I've used for that is the OHLE Wagon Works fluorescent tube batten lights, and you get a pack of 4. These are excellent, they're a tenner. But in there you get 8 LEDs, and each batten can hold 2 LEDs. Okay, so that's from the OHLE Wagon Works website. The link is in the description below for them. I'm using a lot of these now actually. I used it on my low relief factory at the depot as well. This angle will give you a perfect view of the lighting. What I've done with the battens here is I've actually chopped them in half. I'm only using 1 LED per floor. Being quite a small enclosed area, the light doesn't have to fill a large area, and I don't want the light piercing through the glazing and lighting up the entire world. So 1 LED was enough. So I put it within the batten. It's even got the small diffuser on it as well to soften the light, and to give it a more of a time period appearance, I've put a very light coat of clear yellow Tamiya acrylic on the batten, and it just takes the whiteness out of the light and gives it a slight tinge. It's not like a sodium light, you might find on a street lamp of that period, but it's less clear and clinical. And you can see there I've got pieces of square section, hollow section styrene, that's an evergreen styrene tube, and that's just to hold the wires in position. They've just been glued against the ceiling, and it keeps the batten in position as well, and I don't actually have to glue that batten in position. It just stays there because of this piece of plastic. The wires are fed down, and on this particular lit section I've got this single chock block here. That's for the 2 positive wires which have pre-fitted resistors. So the OHLE Wagon Works kit comes with pre-fitted resistors, you have to faff around with that. It goes into a single red wire, and the 2 negative wires, they go into a single black, and as you can see here at the side, the wire comes out and they'll go down to the baseboard and into the main switch section. I'll put the lights on in the building, and that'll give you an indication of the brightness of the LEDs. It's not an atomic flash, it's not piercing clear white light. It's a very subtle, realistic interior light. And if I put the main lights from the loft off, you'll see the level light that comes out. Remember, when these go inside the buildings, even less light will get out because of the size of the actual window opening, and the glazing is weathered. So hopefully you'll see that they're more of a less clear white, and they've got maybe a slight tinge to them. That's the interior units now in position, and if I pull the camera around this way, you'll see where the wiring goes through the baseboard. I've left a little bit of slack there, that's important. It allows you to make any adjustments and manoeuvre the interiors without pulling or tugging on any wires. The building now just slot over the top of this interior, and all you'll see is what you can see through the actual windows of the factory. Scratch building the headspans is very time consuming. You're dealing with 0.45 nickel wire, there's lots of soldering to be done, and whilst it's quite robust, it's also fragile at the same time. You know, the solders, because they're so fine, you're trying to keep the noticeable solder to a minimum. You know, you've got to be very careful how you handle them. Installing them is just as difficult. You've got to make sure both masts are equidistant and also completely vertical, and also on the level. So you've got to get your spirit level out and lay them across the top of the masts. This is to avoid twisting and cupping in the thin wires that go across. You've almost got to keep them at tension as they glue into the baseboard to keep these wires, you know, horizontal. Well, that's it for this update. Hope you've enjoyed it. Obviously I'm working on a few jobs just now. I've had the overhead mast to do, the interiors for the factory itself, the tarmac where the factory will be. Hopefully, however, in the next month I will switch my attention to a retaining wall that will go along the front of the depot here and really box this section in. The depot's been finished for about 12 months now, so it'd be nice to finally get that area of the layout complete. I'll also be sharing some plans for the opposite corner of the layout where I'm looking at a small council house estate. In the meantime, please stay safe. Hope you've enjoyed watching. Cheers for now.